Hey everyone, it's Alex, and I'm here to answer the question, what spotlights should you be getting in the month of December? Now, this is actually an insane month. There's a couple things worth noting right off the bat. The first is that we just had an absolutely insane patch drop, and I actually held back this video till after the patch to give you some updated impressions based on how these cards were impacted, because a lot of them were, including Man-Thing in week 1, who saw Luke Cage get absolutely destroyed in a nerf, which basically raises Man-Thing stocks. Now, one thing I will say right off the bat is that the statistics you see in terms of win percentage and cube rate were from the prior full season. The reason why I'm not using the most up-to-date statistics, which might seem counterintuitive, is because it's only been a very short while since the patch drop. Therefore, we have a ton of bot inflation in the community gathered statistics, and they're horribly unreliable. So I'd rather use a much more concrete set of statistics in order to inform this initial conversation. So let's get started with December 5th to 12th, which is the first week and the launch week of the Sebastian Shaw season, which is a season pass card. We have Man-Thing, Stegron, and Jeff. Right off the bat, Jeff is the major winner here. If you don't have Jeff, you're rolling on these caches. Jeff has to be in your collection. One of the best cards in the game from a win rate perspective, cube rate perspective, versatility perspective. It's the kind of card you need to have in your collection. So if you don't have Jeff, you're rolling regardless of whether or not you want Stegron or Man-Thing. Now, if you do have Jeff, it becomes up to you if you want to go for Stegron and Man-Thing. But realistically, what I will tell you is Stegron is better than people expect it to be, but also it got changed to a 4-6 from a 4-5, and it was actually really good in Cerebro 5, which is an extremely capable deck with Miss Marvel. And so, like, moving it to a 4-6 actually feels like potentially a nerf. So Stegron is really up in the air right now, so I wouldn't roll too much for Stegron, because like its identity in the meta is way questionable compared to even something like Man-Thing, which is going to see a bit of a resurgence thanks to the massive nerf to Luke Cage. Now, usually you do run Luke Cage with Man-Thing, but it's okay because Luke Cage only occupies one location now, so you can play Luke Cage and Man-Thing together. But your opponent can't and will unlikely have Luke Cage in their deck because it's no longer a catch-all to negative power. So Man-Thing's stocks are actually on the rise. You're probably going to see an increase in win rate and cube rate because anytime it's being used, it's going to be much more effective. Overall, this is a 3-star week, not because the cards aren't great. I do think Man-Thing's good. I do think Jeff's good. And Stegron, I think, is probably the pass here. But what holds it back is you're not getting a brand new card, right? You're not getting a new card, so you are getting some rehashed here, but Jeff is definitely propping up the value of the week. But let's move on to week number 2. In week number 2, December 12th to the 19th, we have Blob, the Living Tribunal, and Ravonna, Renslayer. A couple major components here. First of all, Blob, its potential is probably around a 3-star. It has some awkward kind of play patterns based on, like, obviously you don't want to ramp it out because then it destroys your deck and you don't actually draw anything. It has some complexity in the case of, like, you can't really control too much outside of, say, Quicksilver and Domino. You can't really hold back too many cards from your deck. So the result is that, like, you never really know what the net power of your deck is. I mean, you're going to have to use a deck tracker for sure. And I have a link to one down below if you want to install one. But Blob has a little less consistency. Glenn did mention that there will be some cards coming out in the future that'll help activate Blob and potentially increase Blob's viability, but as of right now, likely to see a 3-star play rate. Now, Living Tribunal gets 3 stars, and it's one of those unique cards that has a very low win rate, but a very high cube rate because of how it can catch people off guard. You do have a 46% win rate, but a very positive cube rate because behind an invisible woman, what you're able to do is you're able to essentially set up your huge play with Living Tribunal and then put a tremendous amount of power across the board. And if you know you don't have your line, you can retreat. It's very notable that the nerf to Alioth is actually a shadow nerf to Invisible Woman, because now you can play Alioth and it'll wipe out Invisible Woman's unrevealed card. So that can be extremely detrimental to that sort of play pattern. Something worth considering. Now, Ravonna Renslayer is a card that I actually really like, and it actually got buffed from a 2-1 to a 2-3. Even as a 2-1, I really liked it. I was playing it in a lot of different decks. It was my go-to deck of the prior season, and but the card itself did underperform at a 47% win rate. With the additional +2 power, you're likely to see that statistics increase because, of course, you also have Havok coming out, which could be a very viable card for Ravonna Renslayer as well. You're going to see a lot more Ravonna experimentation, including in C3, which I expect to be a pretty decent archetype with Ravonna being added in. Ravonna in C3 discounts a ton of different things, namely, of course, you have your Cerebro and your Mystique, and then of course you have a whole bunch of kind of periphery cards that are going to benefit from Ravonna Renslayer. Overall, we're looking at a 3-star week simply because I think Blob, although being a new card, is not going to be all that exciting. probably a bit lower end in terms of the excitement meter on this month. Tribunal is an archetype defining card, definitely worth it, and Ravonna I think is being slept on as a whole and probably will be meta relevant at some point in the near future. So I do think the card's worth rolling on. Blob's my lowest. I really want Tribunal and Ravonna in my collection if I'm being honest. So it's unfortunate when the new card is the one that is the least exciting of the bunch. Then we can move on to December 19th to 26th. So this is a weird one, and let me explain. So first of all, Nico and Legion, incredible cards. Nico, 5-star, should be in every single collection. It has proven to be one of the best cards in the game, not because of its weird RNG, but because of how actually versatile it is. Its effects are generally extremely powerful and can help you in almost any game situation. So Nico, shining reviews across the board. Legion, starting to make its way back into the meta. It kind of fell off after its nerf from a 5/8, but ultimately starting to see play again, which is kind of cool because Legion can catch opponents by surprise. And what you're likely to see now moving forward with the nerf to Luke Cage is you're going to see a lot of more high evolutionary, potentially more magic, more skipping turn 6, and Legion is a great surprise play on turn 6 to wipe out a limboed location and take advantage of your opponent. So Legion, I think, will have some stocks rising. Now finally, Havok is the card that is the showboat of this week, and I gotta tell you, Havok is really interesting because like it is one of those cards that's incredibly hard to rate. I mean, this could be a 1-star card because it's complete trash, or a 5-star card because it is unbelievably toxic and game ruining for your opponent. It has the potential to completely change the way Marvel Snap is played for both yourself and your opponent if you're able to Viper it over or something like that. But the key thing is that it's one of those cards that is going to require a whole new archetype, a whole new type of deck design, a whole new different approach to playing Snap, and so it's so hard to evaluate in a vacuum. And as a result, I give it a 3-star potential, but really it's like a 1 or a 5, and it sounds crazy to say that, but that's kind of what it is. Similar to what Nico was prior, but this is even more sporadic. Now, obviously, it has potential, and it is going to be an archetype-defining card more than likely, so I think Havok's worth taking a roll on. Overall, this week is a very strong week because you have Havok as a very fascinating new card. Whether or not it becomes meta relevant is up for debate, but you do have Nico and Legion, 2 fantastic cards, particularly Nico, which seems to find itself in almost every single archetype. So you can confidently roll caches here. And even if you land on Havok and you're like, I think Havok probably is going to suck, you still have a very interesting card with an incredibly unique effect in Snap. So, hey, that's never a bad thing, right? So overall, this week is a 4-star week in my opinion, simply because of the quality of Legion and Nico and the potential and uniqueness of Havok in terms of your collection. But the best week is by far December 26th to January 2nd. This week is absolutely insane. And now let me explain. Selene, I think it's going to be a very good card. I really like Selene. I think it's going to really activate Annihilus and Junk. I think it's going to work phenomenally with Black Widow on turn 3. You Black Widow, you Selene, and basically they get a -4 Widow's Bite. That's absolutely insane. I think Selene's going to be a very strong card, and as a 1-drop, you can't really ask for much more than that. Like, it can have some serious play potential. I like it. Then you have Iron Lad, which is legit one of the highest win rate and highest cube rate cards in Marvel Snap, an effect that is incredibly unique and one of the most commonly asked questions. Hey, how do I replace Iron Lad in this deck? If you don't have Iron Lad, you absolutely need to save your caches until this week. It's like there's no other question. Even if you want Havok and you want everything else and you're a free-to-play player, you have to get Iron Lad. So you have to have at least 4 Spotlight keys saved for this week for Iron Lad if you don't have them, okay? Absolute 5-star card, you need to have it. And I don't even like Iron Lad that much, but it's just that meta relevant. You need it, right? So definitely save up for Iron Lad. If you hit Selene as a kind of a secondary prize, and that's great because Selene, I think, is going to be legit. Now, here's the wild card, okay? And this is why I'm so happy that I'm recording this video after the patch dropped. Black Knight. Now, the statistics you're seeing are the Black Knight prior to the buff. So basically what happened with Black Knight is it was running a 51% win rate, plus 14 cube rate, which is fine. It's totally normal. That's like a very baseline stat. But you could Shang-Chi the Ebony Blade. You could Shadow King the Ebony Blade. You can no longer do that. It has an ongoing ability where basically the Ebony Blade cannot be destroyed or have its power reduced. So you'd have to like Viper it or Enchantress it and then Shang-Chi it. No one's going to do that. So that Ebony Blade is now like infallible in power. And the Black Knight, is going to be incredible because of it. Now, it has a bit of an awkward like play pattern a little bit. Discard tends to have that. but I cannot understate that I think Black Knight could have some serious potential. Now, by the time this week comes around, because right now it's December 5th, right? By the time December 26th comes around, you will know if Black Knight is worth rolling on. So this week could be absolutely insane in terms of its meta-defining nature, because it's entirely possible that Black Knight is the discard deck to play, especially considering the change to Chavez. So reliable discard isn't really a thing right now anymore, because you can't just Dracula your Apocalypse and play your Chavez. It doesn't work like that anymore, so you need a different play pattern, okay? The result is Black Knight might become a very viable discard archetype. So honestly, this is a 5-star week. Right now, it's looking like a 5-star week because Selene looks like it's going to be really awesome for junk. Iron Lad's a must-have, and you just had a massive buff to Black Knight. The only thing that can change this is if like Black Knight ends up being really good and gets nerfed, right? Or something like that. So obviously closer to the date, reevaluate the meta. And of course on the Snapchat and etc. I'll be giving updated kind of advice on these kind of cards and the spotlights themselves. With that being said, if you're not subscribed already, you should subscribe, because we do the Snapchat podcast with Cozy Snap, and we do have a whole bunch of other content we do on an absolute regular basis. If you found this content helpful, hit the like button. I would truly appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next Marvel Snap video.